Far away from the bright centers of trade and power, there was a small listening post on the edge of alien space. The station was old, built from simple metal frames and panels, and most of the workers thought of it as a quiet place where nothing truly important ever happened. They kept watch, recorded passing signals, and reported routine findings back to their councils. Most of the time, the screens only showed static or the faint humming of background stars. One evening, as the second sun of the nearby system dipped behind a cold asteroid, a sound entered their receivers. It was not a normal signal. It did not fit the usual patterns of trade beacons, navigation codes, or drifting natural radio waves. It was something entirely different. Inside the control room, a young operator named Luro looked up from his console with surprise. His wide green eyes stayed fixed on the screen as strange lines moved across it. He adjusted the dials, certain at first that it was a simple error or interference. Yet the sound grew clearer the more he listened. "Chief Rollo," Luro said carefully, "there is something unusual here." Rollo was the head of the station. He was older, with gray skin folds under his eyes and a voice that carried calm weight. He walked over and studied the display. At first he thought it was another fragment of lost data drifting in space, but when he leaned closer, he saw the rhythm inside it. The signal was not random. It pulsed in clear patterns. It rose and fell like a heartbeat. It repeated in cycles that seemed too deliberate to be natural. Rollo frowned. "It is not background noise," he said slowly. "It is shaped. Someone made this." Word spread quickly across the station. Engineers, recorders, and scientists gathered in the control room, listening to the strange call. The sound was not music, but there was something almost musical about it. The tones climbed high, then dropped low, and every cycle ended with a pause as if waiting for an answer. "What does it say?" asked Nira, one of the researchers. Her hands moved across her tablet as she tried to decode it. "It is not in any known language. It is not trade code, not council script, not anything in our databases." Juro, the station's elder scholar, sat quietly in the back. He had spent many years studying fragments of forgotten worlds. His eyes were sharper than most believed. When he finally spoke, the room grew silent. "It feels like an invitation," Juro said. "Or perhaps a summons." The others looked at him with unease. "A summons? From whom? And for what?" Rollo ordered the team to trace the source. After hours of careful study, they found the direction of origin. The signal had come from far away, near an old star system that most maps marked as empty. No stations. No colonies. No known life. Yet the signal was strong and steady, as if someone had placed a beacon there long ago and left it to wait. Speculation filled the room. Some thought it might be the remains of a forgotten race, calling out into silence. Others feared it might be a trap, designed to lure explorers into danger. But none could deny its strange pull. The patterns repeated again and again, simple enough that even a child could notice the order. They carried a kind of structure that reached past language, touching the mind directly. It was not a message of words but of intent. Whoever sent it wanted to be found. As the station debated, the wider sector began to hear of the discovery. Rollo sent the data through council channels, and within days, trade guilds, science academies, and wandering fleets were whispering about the strange signal at the edge of the maps. Curiosity spread like fire through dry fields. Some were eager to study it. Some felt nervous, for old tales spoke of warnings left behind by those who faced dangers too great to describe. A few even remembered the name given to a people said to come from the harshest of worlds, a people many believed to be myth, the Deathworlders. But for now, no one could be sure. Back at the station, Rollo stood by the main screen late at night when most of the crew had gone to rest. The signal pulsed gently, almost like a living thing breathing through the speakers. He folded his arms and listened. The sound carried weight, as if time itself leaned forward to watch. He whispered to himself, "Who are you, and why now?" The screen glowed, the tones repeated, and the stars outside looked strangely alive. The station, once quiet and forgotten, had become the first witness to a mystery that would change more than anyone on board could imagine. The signal continued to call. And somewhere far away, an answer was already on its way. The strange signal did not stay hidden for long. Once the councils received the data from Rollo's station, discussions began to spread across many worlds. In great halls of learning, in quiet temples, in loud market squares, people whispered about the message. Some called it a discovery of a new friend. Others warned it might be the echo of an old danger. On the station itself, the mood grew divided. Luro was excited. He stayed up every night listening to the repeating tones and drawing shapes from the patterns. To him, it felt like a puzzle waiting to be solved. He imagined a lost civilization reaching out, hoping that someone, at last, would hear their voice. Nira, however, grew restless. She studied the harmonics and found them unsettling. The way the signal paused at the end of each cycle made her feel as if it expected something, like a question waiting for a reply. One evening she said quietly, "It is not just sound. It feels like thought." Rollo did not answer her right away. He understood her worry. Even he, with all his calm experience, felt the weight of the signal deep in his chest. But he had learned long ago not to let fear speak too soon. It was Juro, the elder scholar, who finally gave the station its first real warning. After days of listening and comparing notes with old records, he gathered the crew in the main hall. His voice was slow but steady, and every word carried importance. "This is not the voice of the weak," he told them. "This signal was shaped to reach across time and distance. It is not a call for help alone. It is also a test." The crew looked at him with confusion. Luro frowned. "A test of what?" Juro closed his eyes. "A test of strength. Whoever sent this wanted to know who is strong enough to hear it, follow it, and arrive." Silence filled the room. The meaning of those words spread slowly through each mind. A call like this was not a gift. It was a challenge. When the councils heard Juro's interpretation, arguments broke out. Some leaders said the signal must be left alone, forgotten, so that no danger would come into their borders. Others claimed that ignoring it would make them appear weak to whoever waited on the other side. If a great power had left this call, perhaps it was watching still. Among the whispers that passed from ship to ship, one word began to rise again: Deathworlders. In many cultures, Deathworlders were nothing more than a story told to frighten young ones. They were described as people who came from a world so hostile that even its air tried to break them. A world filled with storms, quakes, and endless struggle. According to the tales, if such a people truly existed, they would be stronger than any empire, for nothing could frighten them. Most had dismissed the legends as myths, until now. On the listening post, Rollo sat with Juro after the meeting. The two looked out through the window at the dark stars. The elder's hands trembled slightly as he spoke. "Long ago," Juro said, "I found fragments in old archives. They told of travelers who spoke of a world where life was hard, but the people grew harder still. No one ever proved those stories true. Yet the way the signal is built, the way it challenges whoever hears it. I cannot stop thinking of them." Rollo turned his eyes to the stars. "If they are real," he said, "then they may already be coming." The following days brought more signs. Trade fleets reported strange ships moving at the edge of their sensors, moving with speed and silence. Explorers who had set out toward the source system went missing, their transmissions cut short. Each new report deepened the unease. Luro, still hopeful, argued that the visitors might be allies. If the Deathworlders are real, perhaps they are not what the legends say. Perhaps they seek friends, not conquest. Nira shook her head. "Hope is kind, Luro," but it cannot protect us if the stories are true. The debate reached every level of society. Should they prepare weapons? Should they hide? Should they send an answer to the signal? Or should they wait in silence and see what happened? No choice felt safe. At last, the council sent a message across the stars. It was a simple broadcast, carrying no threat, only a statement: "We have heard you." The signal was sent again and again, drifting into the void. The people waited, holding their breath, wondering if anyone would answer. Days passed. Then weeks. Still the original signal repeated, unchanged, steady as the beat of a distant heart. But in the silence between those repeating tones, some listeners began to notice a faint reply. It was small, almost lost in the noise of space, but it grew stronger each day. A second rhythm was coming closer. Rollo heard it first one night while walking the empty halls. He froze as the sound touched his ears, a quiet echo that did not belong to the old beacon. It was newer, sharper, alive. "They are on their way," he whispered to himself. The warning had been spoken. Now the truth was moving closer, carried on the wings of ships no one had yet seen. The reply came first as a whisper, a faint echo that almost blended into the hum of the old beacon. At first, only careful listeners like Rollo could hear it. But as days passed, the sound grew louder, clearer, and more deliberate. Soon the entire station could recognize the difference. "This is no ghost," Nira said as she studied the waves on her screen. "Something is moving toward us. It is not the beacon. It is a fleet." The word fleet carried heavy weight. Fleets meant power. Fleets meant a people capable of traveling the stars in groups large enough to shape events. Fleets were not built for silence, yet this one approached with almost no noise until the signal betrayed its presence. The station crew worked day and night to calculate their speed. The numbers shocked everyone. Whoever traveled this way crossed vast distances with an efficiency few had seen before. These ships were built for endurance and long voyages, not for show or ceremony. The councils received the reports, and soon the entire sector turned its eyes toward the edge of their space. Traders postponed journeys. Explorers returned from the outer rim. Ordinary citizens filled public halls to hear updates. The old legends of the Deathworlders rose again, no longer whispers but daily conversations. When the fleet finally arrived, there was no mistaking it. The first ship appeared on long-range scans, a massive silhouette that seemed patched together from heavy plates of metal. Unlike the sleek and shining designs of council ships, this one looked rough, as though it had faced countless trials and carried the marks of survival proudly. Behind it came more, dozens of them, each different yet similar in their rugged strength. "They look as if they were built to endure storms," Luro said softly, staring at the display. Rollo nodded. "They were not made for beauty. They were made for life against all odds." The fleet slowed as it crossed into alien space. To the surprise of many, there were no signs of attack. No weapons glowed. No threatening signals were sent. Instead, the lead ship transmitted a calm, steady message. Rollo ordered it played across the hall. The voice that filled the station was firm but warm. Its accent was strange, yet the words had been carefully shaped to match the common council tongue. "We heard your call. We followed. We are human." The word hung in the air, human. It was a name none of them had spoken before, yet it matched the old myths. The Deathworlders had a name, and now that name was known. Juro sat silently at the back of the hall, his eyes wide. For years he had searched old archives, believing the stories of a harsh world might carry truth. Now the truth had come through the stars. The station quickly sent a cautious response. "We hear you. This space belongs to many. State your purpose." The humans answered with patience. "We come not to conquer. We come because we thought someone called for help. If you did not send the beacon, then someone else must have." We followed to make sure no one was left alone. The words created confusion. Some on the station whispered with relief, others with doubt. Nero leaned close to Rollo and said, "If they are so kind, why do they travel with so many ships?" Rollo gave no quick answer. He understood both sides. Kindness and caution could walk together, but he also knew fleets rarely crossed the stars without reason. Still, the humans made no sudden moves. Their ships formed a gentle line, keeping respectful distance from alien patrol routes. The signals they sent carried no hidden codes, only greetings and requests to speak face to face. At last, the councils approved a meeting. An embassy would travel from the station to the lead human ship. Luro begged to join the group, eager to be among the first to meet a being of legend. Nira argued against it, saying such an encounter was too dangerous for the young. Rollo, however, decided to go himself. "If they wished to harm us, they would have shown it already," he said. "I must see with my own eyes who these humans are." When the embassy ship approached the lead vessel, the crew could not help but marvel at its size. The hull bore scratches and dents as if it had passed through storms of stone and fire. Yet it still held strong, a monument to endurance. The humans welcomed them aboard without hesitation. The air inside was heavy but breathable, with a scent of metal and old machinery. Strange markings lined the walls, signs of a language different from any in the council's records. Then they saw the humans themselves. They were taller than most expected, with strong builds shaped by a lifetime of challenge. Their skin came in many shades, their eyes bright with curiosity. Unlike many species that moved with careful grace, the humans carried themselves with an energy that felt both cautious and eager at once. One among them stepped forward. Her name was Mara, and she wore simple clothes with no symbols of power. She greeted Rollo with an open hand and a steady gaze. "We are far from our home," she said. "But we came because we believed someone needed us." Her words carried no threat, only a strange certainty that unsettled and comforted at the same time. Rollo bowed his head slightly in respect. "If the myths are true, your people have faced much. Perhaps that is why you are here now." Mara nodded. "On our world, survival is the first teacher. We endure so we may help others endure as well." The first meeting ended with no conflict, only questions. As the embassy returned to the station, the crew felt the weight of what had begun. The Deathworlders were real. They were human. And they had crossed into alien space not with weapons raised, but with a purpose no one yet fully understood. The signal still pulsed in the background, steady and unchanged, but now it had found an answer. The arrival of the humans spread across alien space like a wave across water. Every council, guild, and academy now spoke of them openly. Some still clung to fear, whispering that the old myths of the Deathworlders told of danger. Others began to feel curiosity, even admiration, for the newcomers who had crossed so far only to answer a call that was not their own. On the listening station, the crew prepared for another meeting with the human fleet. This time it would not be only greetings. The councils had ordered questions. They wanted to know why the humans had come, what they wanted, and what they truly were. Rollo was chosen again to lead the talks. Beside him stood Nira, who had grown more cautious with each passing day, and Luro, whose excitement was difficult to contain. Juro, though weary with age, insisted on joining as well. "If this is history," he said, "then I will see it with my own eyes." The embassy ship crossed the void once more, docking carefully with the human flagship. As before, the doors opened without delay, and the crew was welcomed into the heavy air of the vessel. Mara, the human who had spoken for her people, was waiting. She smiled in a way that was unfamiliar yet strangely warm. "You came back," she said. "I am glad." Rollo inclined his head. "The councils wish to know more. Your people are new to us. You carry the name Deathworlder in our stories. Is that what you call yourselves?" Mara laughed softly. We do not call ourselves that. We are human. But yes, our home is what you might call a death world. It is full of storms, quakes, and creatures that test us every day. Our world never gave us rest, so we learned to survive through struggle. Perhaps that is why others gave us that name. Nira studied her carefully. If your world is so harsh, why leave it? Why come to others? Mara's eyes softened. Because we know what it feels like to stand alone against hardship. We do not wish others to face it without help. When we heard the beacon, we feared someone was calling for aid. So we came. Luro could not hold back his excitement. Then you did not come to conquer. Mara shook her head. We came to listen. We came to see who had called. Her answer spread through the hall like calm wind after a storm. Yet not all doubt vanished. Rollo still felt the weight of caution pressing against his heart. He looked around the human ship, at the walls built strong but simple, at the crew who moved with discipline but without show. These were not invaders, but they were not fragile either. They were a people forged by struggle, and such people were always unpredictable. As the talks continued, the humans shared more of their story. They spoke of their world's freezing nights and burning days, of seas that rose without warning, of skies that thundered with endless storms. They told of how they built shelters from what little they had, how they grew food in soil that fought against them, and how they learned to trust one another, for no one could survive alone. Juro listened with shining eyes. It is as I thought, he whispered. They are real. The old legends spoke truth. Nira asked carefully, but if survival shaped you, does it not also make you dangerous? Mara did not deny it. She placed a hand on the cold wall of her ship and said, we are dangerous to despair. We are dangerous to fear. We have faced storms that could break mountains, yet we endured. That is what we bring, not destruction, but endurance. Her words stayed with Rollo long after the meeting ended. When the embassy returned to the station, the crew gathered to speak of what they had seen. Luro was filled with hope. Nira still held unease. Juro, though tired, was satisfied to know the myths were true. The council studied every report with care. Across alien space, opinions divided further. Some said the humans could become strong allies, for they understood hardship better than any. Others said such a people would always be a risk, for if they could endure so much, what could truly stop them if they chose to expand? On the station, Rollo stood alone by the viewing glass. The human fleet floated in the distance, steady and patient. They had not pressed forward, nor had they turned away. They simply waited, as if giving the aliens time to decide what came next. The beacon still sang its steady pulse. Its voice had not changed, not even after all these weeks. Whoever had sent it remained hidden. But now the humans were here, answering a call no one else dared to follow. Rollo spoke softly to himself, they came not for conquest, but for connection. Yet what if the signal was never meant for them? What if it was meant to find the strongest? The thought filled him with both hope and unease. For if the beacon was a test, then the humans had already passed it. And that meant greater mysteries were still to come. The humans stayed in orbit, their fleet quiet and still, but their presence spread like a shadow across alien space. Trade ships rerouted their paths, academies rushed to write reports about them. Councils argued late into the night about what should be done. On the listening station, life no longer felt ordinary. Every day new messages arrived from distant worlds asking for details. Every hour the crew watched the beacon and the human fleet together, waiting for something more to happen. One morning, Nira ran into the control room carrying her tablet. Her face showed unease. I have found something, she said. The others gathered quickly. On her screen she displayed the repeating signal. She zoomed into the smallest layers of the sound, the harmonics that most listeners ignored. Then she showed a pattern hidden inside. It is not only a greeting, she explained. It carries memory. Look, these shapes match records of old star charts. The signal holds a map. A map meant purpose. A map meant that the signal was not random at all, but part of a design. Juro leaned close, his old eyes shining. This is no accident. Whoever built this beacon wanted the strongest to find it and follow. Luro's voice was filled with wonder. But why? Why call for the strongest? No one had an answer. The council sent the findings to every world. Soon, debates grew sharper. If the beacon was calling for strength, what had destroyed the ones who sent it? Were they gone because they were too weak? Was the signal a warning or a trap? Rollo felt the weight of the discovery heavy on his shoulders. In a private meeting with Mara aboard the human flagship, he shared the findings. Mara listened carefully, her hands folded. Her face grew serious. So this was not a simple cry for help. It is older. It is something left behind to be found. Yes, Rollo said. And now you have come. The question is, why did the beacon wait until now? And what erased those who built it? Mara looked out the wide window at the stars. Her voice grew quiet but steady. On our world, storms come without warning. We learned not to ask why the storm comes, but how to stand when it does. If this signal is a storm, then we will not run. Her words gave Rollo no comfort, yet they carried strength. The humans did not see fear the way others did. Back on the station, Nero worked day and night to decode more of the beacon. She discovered that the signal carried not only maps but also repeating sequences that resembled warnings. The shapes were simple, like marks of danger on an old road. She felt chills as she showed them to the crew. It is not just summoning, she said. It is also a record. Something terrible happened to those who left this behind. The beacon calls to the strong because the weak did not survive. The room fell silent. Luro lowered his eyes. Juro leaned back in his chair, whispering, so the test is real. When news spread, fear grew across the sector. Many asked the councils to shut down the listening station and forbid any ships from following the map. Others said that to hide was worse than to face the truth. The arguments had no end. Meanwhile, the humans continued to study the beacon themselves. They worked with tools that looked simple but proved surprisingly effective. They noticed details even the council scientists missed, details that pointed toward ancient ruins scattered across distant systems. One evening, Mara called Rollo to her ship again. She showed him the human findings. This signal is not alone, she said. It links to other places. Whoever made it wanted the strongest not only to hear, but to gather. To gather for what? Rollo asked. Mara shook her head. That we do not yet know. But if the danger that destroyed them still remains, then all who are weak will fall. Only those who endure will stand. That is why we are here. Rollo studied her. She spoke with no pride, no boast, only calm certainty. The humans were not drawn by glory. They were drawn by duty. The signal still pulsed in the background, unchanged and eternal, like a drum beat calling across the stars. To the aliens, it had become a sound of unease. To the humans, it had become a challenge waiting to be faced. On the station, the crew gathered by the viewing glass once more. The human fleet floated silent but strong, their patched ships reflecting faint starlight. Beyond them, the endless night stretched wide, holding secrets no one yet understood. Juro spoke softly, his voice full of both fear and awe. The beacon did not call for us. It called for them. And they have answered. Nira turned to Rollo. What will we do? Rollo kept his eyes on the fleet. We will choose. Either we stand with them, or we let them face it alone. But whatever waits out there, it is greater than us. That much is clear. The hidden truth of the signal was no longer a mystery. It was a warning written into the stars themselves. And now, With the humans standing ready, the question was not whether the danger would come, but when. The beacon still sang across the stars, steady and unchanging. Yet on the station, change had already begun. The humans had arrived, and with them came new ways of thinking. At first, the councils tried to keep distance. They believed the humans should remain only as visitors, their fleet watched but not trusted. But little by little, curiosity overcame caution. The humans spoke openly, shared their methods freely, and showed no signs of pride or threat. What they revealed surprised everyone. One day, Rollo visited the human flagship again. He was joined by Nira, Luro, and even Juro, though the elder now walked slowly with a cane. Inside the ship, they found Mara and several of her crew gathered around strange devices. The air was heavy with the smell of oil and metal, and the walls hummed faintly with power. "What are you building?" Luro asked eagerly. Mara smiled. "Not building. Repairing. We always repair. Nothing is ever wasted." She held up a piece of broken metal, bent and scorched. To the aliens, it looked like useless scrap. Yet within minutes the humans had reshaped it, fit it into another device, and made the machine run again. Sparks of light flickered, and the hum grew stronger. Nira frowned. "Why not replace it with new material? That would be easier." Mara's eyes softened. "On our world, new material was rare. We learned to use what we had, to turn weakness into strength. When you live on a death world, nothing can be wasted. Even broken things can hold life." Rollo watched closely. The humans carried a wisdom shaped not by comfort but by necessity. They solved problems not by seeking perfection but by making imperfection work. In the days that followed, the humans visited the station. They moved through its narrow halls with curiosity, studying every system. Where the aliens saw aging machines and tired parts, the humans saw opportunity. "This cooling system runs hot," one human engineer said, tapping the pipes with his knuckles. "But if you add these smaller vents here, it will last longer." Another human pointed at the cracked panels of the station's energy grid. "You think it is failing. But it can be balanced. Look, we will link these lines differently. The power will flow smoother." The station crew watched with disbelief as the humans improved system after system. They did not ask for new resources. They did not complain about old equipment. They simply adapted, turning weakness into strength again and again. Soon the aliens began to learn from them. Luro followed the human engineers everywhere, writing down every step. Nira at first resisted, saying the humans' methods were too risky, but eventually even she admitted their solutions worked. Juro, though weary, was the most impressed. "They see what we do not," he said. "Where we see failure, they see chance. This is their gift." The councils could not ignore the results. Reports came in that the station now ran more efficiently than ever. Small problems that had troubled them for years were solved in days. The humans had shown that survival was not about wealth or power but about adaptation. One evening, Rollo spoke with Mara privately. They stood by the viewing glass, looking at the beacon in the distance. "Your people carry strange strength," Rollo said. "You take what is broken and make it useful again. You do the same with fear. Where others hesitate, you move forward." Mara nodded. "It is not that we are without fear. It is that fear never kept us alive. We learned that storms do not wait for us to feel ready. So we act, even when afraid." Rollo felt the truth of her words. He remembered the debates of the councils, the endless arguments that delayed decisions. In contrast, the humans wasted no time. They accepted hardship and answered it with action. As the days passed, more aliens began to see humans not as a danger but as teachers. Farmers learned new ways to grow food in poor soil. Engineers discovered methods to strengthen old machines. Even ordinary workers found hope in the simple human phrase that Mara repeated often, "We will find a way." The beacon still pulsed, carrying its hidden message, reminding everyone that a greater challenge lay ahead. Yet the fear that once surrounded it began to fade. With the humans beside them, the aliens felt a new kind of courage. One night, as the crew of the station gathered to watch the stars, Luro spoke with excitement. "Before the humans came, I thought strength meant weapons and power. But now I see it is something else. It is the will to keep trying." Nira, once doubtful, nodded slowly. "They do not fight the storm. They learn to walk through it." Juro, resting his hands on his cane, smiled faintly. "Perhaps that is why the beacon called to them. It was never looking for conquerors. It was looking for survivors." Rollo looked out at the human fleet, their rugged ships glowing faintly against the darkness. He felt a calm certainty rise in him. The Deathworlders had not come to bring fear. They had come to bring a way of living that could face whatever mystery still waited in the shadows of the beacon. For the first time since the signal began, Rollo felt hope stronger than fear. The humans had shown their way, and that way was endurance. The beacon's steady voice had become part of daily life. Its rhythm was heard in every hall of the listening station, like a heartbeat that never rested. For weeks, it had been a sound of unease. Now, after the arrival of the humans, it had become something different. It was still a mystery, but it was no longer faced with fear alone. The councils continued their debates, but their tone had changed. Where once they argued only about danger, they now spoke of opportunity. Reports from the station and from the human fleet showed progress. Old machines that had barely worked were stronger than before. Farms on distant colonies had already used human methods to improve their harvests. People began to believe that with the humans beside them, perhaps the unknown could be faced. Still, the greatest question remained. What was to be done about the beacon? Ignore it and hope the hidden danger would never rise again, or follow it and face whatever had erased the ones who left it behind? On the station, the crew often spoke of this question late into the night. Luro was certain. "We cannot hide," he said. "If the beacon was left as a warning, then the danger is already waiting. If it was left as a summons, then it is waiting for us to come. Either way, silence will not save us." Nero was more cautious. "But to follow it is to risk everything. What if the humans are wrong? What if this is the trap that destroys us?" Juro, old and wise, gave his quiet answer. "Then it is better to face it with them than to face it later alone." Rollo listened to them all, but he spoke little. He knew that the decision was not his alone. It belonged to the councils and to all the worlds who shared this space. Yet deep inside, he felt the truth. The humans had already chosen. Whether the councils agreed or not, the Deathworlders would not turn back. Days later, the councils sent their final message to the station. The decision was made. They would not forbid the humans from acting. Instead, they would join them. The announcement was simple but powerful: "We will stand together." When the message was read aloud in the control hall, the crew stood silent for a long moment. Then Luro smiled, his young eyes bright. Nira exhaled as if she had carried a heavy weight too long. Even Juro straightened a little, as though a burden had lifted from his shoulders. Soon after, a meeting was held aboard the human flagship. Leaders from several alien worlds came, along with Rollo and his crew. The hall was filled with voices from many species, some nervous, some excited. At the center stood Mara, calm and steady. She spoke first. "We came because we thought someone needed help. Now we see that the beacon was not only a call. It was a question. Who will endure? Who will stand? We humans cannot answer it alone. But together, perhaps we can." Her words carried across the hall. The alien leaders exchanged glances. Slowly, one after another, they voiced their agreement. They would share knowledge, resources, and strength. Not as one empire over another, but as partners. The pact was not written in fear, nor in demands. It was written in shared purpose. They called it an alliance of endurance. When the meeting ended, the first fleet of mixed ships formed. Human vessels, patched and rugged, flew beside sleek alien craft. The sight was strange but inspiring. For the first time, different peoples moved not in suspicion but in trust. On the station, the crew watched the Alliance fleet drift into formation. The beacon still pulsed, pointing toward distant stars and unknown ruins. But now the path did not feel like a road to doom. It felt like the beginning of something greater. That evening, Rollo stood by the viewing glass. Mara joined him, her gaze fixed on the endless night. "You have changed us," Rollo said softly. "Before you came, we feared the signal. Now we see it as a challenge, not a curse." Mara shook her head. "We did not change you. We only reminded you of what you already had. You too can endure. You only needed to believe it." Rollo smiled faintly. For the first time since the signal began, his heart felt light. Behind them, Luro and Nira spoke excitedly about the journey ahead, while Juro listened with quiet pride. The young dreamed of discovery, the cautious learned to trust, and the elder saw his long search for truth fulfilled. The beacon's voice continued, steady and eternal. It was no longer the sound of mystery alone. It had become the sound of unity, of many peoples answering together. And so the story of the Deathworlders did not end with fear, but with a beginning. The humans had crossed into alien space not to take, but to share. And in doing so, they gave the galaxy something greater than strength. They gave it hope. The fleet turned toward the stars, ready to follow the beacon's path. Whatever waited in the unknown, they would face it not as strangers but as allies.